what time of the year the snow comes here? Winnipeg, I've heard
Honestly,
like
it could start now, but it hopefully closer to the end of October or first week of November.
Yeah, it was like weird weather experiences. I remember when I was a student, got up in the morning, it was all bright sunshine. When I was trying to reach to the bus stop, it started raining, and when I was at college, it was all snow.
Yeah,
Really happen.
That'll happen. Those spring times when you're not sure, it's like, oh, it's spring here yet? Oh no, it's still winter. Okay.
Yeah, I just remember like what, April first week maybe in Kingston. It was all clear, and the next day you got up the snow water. So you're like from Winnipeg, or like you moved here?
Yep. Born and raised.
Oh, nice. That's fun.
And Persian sugar.
BGMs. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well, man. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 111, featuring Karan Pal, an amazing digital artist and Spaces host who's really a heartfelt advocate for art on the blockchain and Web3, and shares my love for the creator economy on the blockchain, which we like to talk about a lot here on Web3 Warriors. Welcome, Karan. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. It's a lovely introduction. Very powerful, very energetic, just like the way I like it. So, yeah, looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for having me today.
Nice. Awesome. Looking forward to it. And I'm happy to say you're actually the first one to join me from my local city, my home city, where I was born and raised in Winnipeg. I know you're newer to the city. You were asking about when the snow is going to arrive earlier. So welcome to Winnipeg. And it's really cool to be able to chat with somebody in the space who's advocating for Web3 and blockchain and crypto, and also, you know, local. Maybe we should have tried to meet in a studio or something in person. I'm working on that piece of it. You know, if I want to take the podcast to that next level, apparently you got to have a lot more in-person, you know, one-on-one interviews. So maybe that'll be next on the list. And with episode 111, we are officially kicking off season 6 of Web3 Warriors, which is super exciting. So I want to thank all of our fans and listeners and guests, of course, who have shared so much knowledge and insights about where we are with crypto and Web3 and blockchain development and the metaverse and DeFi and all these important topics that are under the umbrella of Web3. So we're going to keep pushing here. We're going to keep talking to people that are building and creating and bringing value to Web3 and to crypto, but also to the broader community, right? To artists who maybe don't see the value in crypto and Web3 and blockchain, and pulling them in and showing what's possible and getting rid of all the FUD and getting rid of maybe all these kind of extra hypey kind of ideas that you just join NFTs and you get rich overnight or something like that. It's not about that, right? It's just about adding to your repertoire, adding to your options as a creator, as an artist, and understanding what the digital world brings to creators and artists and what the blockchain brings. So that's what's up. Yes, Idris, number 111 is a good number. So thank you for joining us, man. And to all the other listeners out there, as we're chatting in this live stream conversation, if you do have any questions for myself or for Karan, definitely chime in the chat, and we always love to see it and kind of adapt accordingly and answer any questions and thought-provoking questions that come up. You might even have a free NFT in it for you. We'll see. So for today's show, as always, we have a theme of every episode, and this is one of those recurring themes that we have, which is the creator economy on the blockchain, and specifically art on the blockchain, and how artists like Karan here and others who have found a passion and have creativity that they now are bringing onto the blockchain and are finding a new audience, a global audience, and connecting with people that they maybe otherwise would not have met and connected with, right? So all of the artists that we've really interviewed on this show, I could go through the list, but there's a lot, whether it's in the music space, in the digital art space, in the physical art space, bringing it into the digital, whether it's people creating 3D assets for the metaverse in very unique and creative ways. Shout out to Jagar. Jagar's been out there building digital assets. He's our number one guest. Him and Ebro we've had on the show I think 4 or 5 times now. But yeah, really just all about kind of focusing on the artists and the creators. But what we've seen from all of these artists is that it's created new opportunities for them, right? Whether it's traveling, whether it's reaching new audiences that they wouldn't have reached otherwise, or whether it's actually, you know, supporting their local communities and being able to invest in local local tech initiatives or local schools for girls or all kinds of different really inspiring kind of use cases that we've heard, where it's not just about that artist creating revenue for themselves, but actually investing back into their community and creating new opportunities for the broader community. So today we're going to hear from Karan and really hear what he's been building, what he's been working on, and importantly, what brought him to Web3 and what makes him such a passionate advocate for on-chain art and Web3. So with all that, thank you for joining, Karan. Welcome, welcome. Maybe before we dive into your art and show some of your art, please do share a little bit about, what brought you to Web3 and why do you think the NFTs on the blockchain are such a good use case for artists?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, love the energy here. So just a quick introduction. I'm Karan Pal. You can also call me KP. Those are my initials. People call me that too. So I'm a 28-year-old visual designer and NFT artist, now here based in Winnipeg. So my first encounter with Web3 was in 2021, when this entire, I would say, madness was happening, the extreme bull run and, people buying NFTs and all. So, my friends started pushing me that, you've got all these creations in your hard drive and, it's absolute of no use. Otherwise, they're just going to be lying there and people will never get to know about it. So why don't you jump into Web3 and explore NFTs? So I was very slow to it. Like I could have jumped earlier, like in the early days of 2021 and getting bigger exposure, but I kept on procrastinating because, and then there came a time where I was just reading a lot of articles about what really is happening in the world. Why is, the world going crazy about NFTs or Web3, because I was just looking for that value, that why should I be investing into this? And that went back to my core belief that, I graduated as a graphic designer. So in 2019, and I used to work at a marketing agency. So I produced a lot of illustrations, So I always wanted to be an artist. I wanted to go to a fine art college, but that's not really very sustainable career as an artist. So, you tend to gravitate towards other creative professions. But there's always this question in the head that these illustrations or these works of art that I produce, these qualify to be art, right? So if you look at a basic structure on how do we judge what is a work of art, there are three things basically. First thing is the idea, that the idea was very well thought of. And the second thing is this idea was even more consciously executed. And because it was very consciously thought of and executed, it becomes rare. So, that is how art works. That is what, I understood by looking into things, be it painting, sculpture, or even a marketing campaign that is called as a work of art, or an automobile that is called as a work of art, right? Or a bag by a Louis Vuitton is a work of art. So I'm like, this is the structure that's working everywhere. So I used to produce a lot of JPEGs and moving pictures. So I was like, I am not a traditional artist. I don't paint on canvas, but is there a way that these JPEGs will ever be considered as a fine work of art? Because it qualifies. I'm following the same structure. I'm thinking consciously. I'm even more taking all the time to execute it. And it is rare. This is my creation. You will not find it on the internet because I've read the books, I've gone through the influences, I've checked with the scholars, and that is when I'm presenting you these things, right? So that is when Web3 really get onto my head, because people started to value JPEGs and moving pictures, and I was like, this is the moment that I was looking for. So keeping all the money aside, keeping all the badness aside, I just went into it. I was like, this is going to be my place because this is what I do.
No doubt.
And you were also talking about creators economy. Sorry, I just cut you off.
No,
but
you're good.
I think it's important to note that we need tools as creators on the internet, right? So this is just the next internet, right? We're always living more in the virtual world. Phone calls are virtual, your Instagrams are virtual, your Twitters are virtual, your forecasters are virtual. So this is just one step next to it. And for that, we need a lot of tools. And I think that's where the blockchain really helps, in terms of your storage, in terms of, intellectual property rights, which is very less talked of in the creator space, I feel. And also everything was just really benefiting this big idea that somebody who's producing JPEGs can be called as a fine artist, not just any commercial artist. So that's how I just came into Web3.
I love it. I love it. So I have to ask then, because I hadn't realized the graphic designer background, which definitely explains a lot. Do you think it would be a fair thing to say that pretty much all graphic designers are digital artists? Or is there a certain line where you cross, going from your everyday graphic designer who's putting out marketing materials for corporations or for themselves, or, independent artists, whatever the case might be, and then there's like a threshold that crosses those kind of three things you were just mentioning that makes you officially like a digital artist, or you need to have some type of like artistry essentially, even just to be a graphic designer, right? I mean, it's in the name, designer, right? But I'm just curious about that distinction and how you, as somebody who's obviously in both worlds, might make a distinction there.
So everything just depends upon the context. Like, you can use graphic design principles to produce art. A lot of artists do that. Somebody like me who uses like basic shape, color, form, very flat aesthetics, that are like generally considered to be very graphic design oriented. And then you can also use all the principles coming from the art world,
Mm-hmm.
and storytelling and, drama and all of these things into your graphic design work. So, I think these two worlds are just interconnected because all of us were artists first, and then slowly we came across this whole idea of design. So if you know about movements like Bauhaus or minimalism or like those early movements, that was really shaping this idea of design, which was further leading into this whole idea of product design, graphic design, user
Mm-hmm.
experience design. So we've evolved from being artists to problem solvers, but we tend to use the same principles of art and like basic graphic design principles that were like evolved over a period of time. But to answer your question, like it depends on the context that what a particular person is trying to do. Like a
Okay.
lot of these artists, like I've met them, vector artists specifically, they're using like all sorts of graphic design techniques and tools to produce their work as a work of art, and they call it as a work of art, they define it as a work of art, and indeed it is accepted as a work of art, but it all depends upon the context, the way you want to present it.
Yeah, and I guess art is in the eye of the beholder, right? I think that's one thing that NFTs have really shown, is that it's so subjective. And I'll always remember, early 2021, the Beeple sale happens, the art conversation is kind of front and center.
Yeah.
Artists are out here minting their NFTs, selling their NFTs. It's just kind of the main attraction. And then the Bored Apes drop, and all these other kind of little exclusive clicks start popping up, and it becomes about the PFPs because they increase in value so much because everybody wants to be part of these clicks, right? And so all of a sudden that's the narrative now. It's like, get into these PFP groups and hope that your group ends up being in high demand and the value goes up. And so it seems like with that, the whole narrative kind of shifted away from the art and the I don't know, the more pure kind of reasoning, I would say, as opposed to just like make the number go up and, make your NFTs increase in value. Although that was always, of course, part of the conversation. So you mentioned how you kind of were procrastinating a little bit initially. When would you say you really started? Like when did you mint your first NFT and kind of jumped in? Was it 2022, you say?
Yeah, I was late 2021, December. I
Okay.
remember that was the first time there was this Indian NFT marketplace that used to run on Binance Smart Chain.
Oh, yeah.
So we were all there, and that's where everything got
Was that the
started.
Wazir X or
So
whatever?
that was the next year.
Nice. I remember. I think I even collected one or two there. Some couple Indian artists reached out and were like, "Hey, because I had met them through Clubhouse, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll check it out." So yeah, I think I did collect one or two there, but it went under, right? Wazir? Did it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
went down recently. That's a separate conversation. I
Yeah,
like
that's
why.
rough. That's rough. So I was just curious because getting a more clear view of when you started, how much have you seen that kind of PFP and meme coin kind of conversation distracting away from the art conversation? And is that something you're concerned about? Do you think that the art will always have its kind of fan base essentially, and that it'll just go through kind of ebbs and flows as far as like popularity? How do you, as an artist who's minted art and who started in late 2021, how do you kind of view that conversation? And do you think it's like an issue, or do you think it's really just it's going to always be part of the Web3 conversation, kind of like?
So it's not an issue, never. I mean, a few things that I just want to highlight at the
Mm.
moment, I think, with this is that I think as creators, we have began to like, complain a lot about that, oh, things are not happening, NFTs are not moving forward. I mean, like, but if you analyze, so I'm more focused on like understanding the structure of a specific industry, like, you know, like the Earth has its seasons, right? Now we are heading towards the winter season, then comes in spring, then comes the summer, So like everything has a pattern. Like human beings have a pattern. Every industry has a specific pattern. So I was like, what is the pattern that the NFT industry is going through? I mean, so let's just wait. Let's not jump into it, because I was very sure that this is not a fad that will just go away. That 1 year down the line, I'll just wait. And you will see that the biggest, more influential sales have happened during the bear market, right? So you will see all these things have happened when things got slowed down and people understood where was the value, who was actually creating the value, or who was just creating some sort of a scam. So, I think those things have happened. And then you realize that there's a specific structure to it. There's a specific segmentation of NFTs industry. Like you're talking about, like, are you into gaming? I'm like, no, because gaming NFTs is a separate space, right? Now, music NFTs is a separate space. PFPs is a separate space. One-on-ones is a separate space. Editions are a separate space. So,
well, let's pause there. You think the one of ones versus the editions are really separate? Like, because I mean, look at like exchange.art, right? We've got some of your cool artwork up here, right? And so you've got your editions of 20 listed next to your one of one. So I feel like the art conversation can have limited editions and one of ones, and I feel like it's kind of part of the same cluster. But how would you differentiate that? Or you just mean from a value proposition perspective?
So it all depends upon the artist, right? So you can be an artist who's operating in gaming too and sell one-on-ones and editions too. Like, what are your personal goals? I mean, that's the big question that I always ask. Like recently, I sat down on a pen and a paper just to rethink that why am I in Web3? Like, am I wasting my time? Like, is it getting productive day by day? Like, because the initial goal was to become an artist, right? And for that, I had specific goals that this is what I'm supposed to do. And in between, I kind of like lost my way because I was just chasing all the airdrops, all the meme coins.
Like you say, you've been an artist the whole time, right? It was.
Yeah, so I mean, the challenge was to stay focused in just one particular lane, because, you've seen that all these artists, those who are like real big, they're just staying in their own lane, right? They are not getting into like any sort of an airdrop, or they're not getting into like, the other side. They are there where they were. I think that's where they've succeeded, right? But that can also be subjective. You can say that today I'm succeeding as a one-on-one artist. Tomorrow I'll just try to drop some editions. It's an experiment. So
100%.
It depends upon like what your goals are. And I think the momentary benefit that sometimes Web3 gives you is like huge than the long-term benefit. So, so for people looking for instant gratification, I always tell them that this is the place for you, right? You don't have to wait for 4 or 5 years down the line. There's something happening all the time. You can just make
I mean, I would caution against instant gratification, but definitely it can happen like when you least expect it, kind of thing, right? To your point about the patterns, though, right? And I've asked this of others who started kind of in 2021 and saw the crazy hype that year was, and even into 2022, really until what's it called? Now I'm forgetting what's his name, the scammer guy, when that whole thing fell over. Pardon?
SBF? The FTX?
Yes, SBF, yes. When that whole thing happened and there was a huge crash in the Solana price and pretty much a bunch of other prices, it seems like that was when the real bear market kind of started taking over. But as somebody who was there through the last bull market of NFTs, and to your point about the patterns, right? How do you think, and obviously we're all just using our crystal ball, we don't know exactly how things are going to go because it is a new industry, right? And that the reality is that 2021 wave, I mean, there was technically a smaller wave before that, right? When it actually started with CryptoKitties and like whatever, those few other ones from 2018, 19. But like the real wave was 2021, and then it simmered down, halfway through 2022. So looking at the patterns and looking at the fact that we've definitely been in some kind of bear market for the last, 2 years, what do you think, or what do you hope, I guess, is kind of the next wave of the pattern? And do you think that we ever get to a place of the extreme speculation that we had kind of in 2021, early 2022? Or how are you kind of hoping and thinking these patterns are going to play out?
So what I see is that, NFT space is getting much more easier to operate day by day because of these segmentation of various different areas and use case of NFTs. That's what you see. Like there are certain NFTs that give you access to events. So that's a whole separate industry to operate. There are certain NFTs that gives you access to certain games. That's a whole together different area to operate. Certain NFTs that give you access to certain airdrops. So, I think there's segmentation happening, which is great because now otherwise, if you think about the 2021, like all of the things were happening in just like it's like too many people like trying to cook the same stuff. It's like you're like, where should I go? Like,
Yeah.
are these noodles to have, or this is a pasta? Like, what exactly is this? Like, what am I supposed to have, right? So now it's just getting a lot more simpler to operate, I would say, because even though people like try to say that, oh, NFTs are dead and all that stuff, but I don't believe in that. It's just a vague statement, just a marketing hook to just get to people
Right.
read.
You
So
just
it's
sold
not,
some art yesterday, didn't you? I just bought some art this morning. I bought some art yesterday, so I know they're not dead. I'm here collecting art, and somebody's making money off the art I collect, so they're definitely not dead, right?
yeah. So I mean, all of these things are leading to these particular structures, and then within those structures, there are specific patterns, right? So in those specific patterns, you can see how people are selling their one-on-ones. They're bringing Web 2 people into Web 3. Like, just to give you a little example, what I'm trying to do is I've got this artwork of the pavilion building, inspired from, the
Yeah, I love
Senegal.
it. It's a beautiful piece. We used it as the backdrop on the episode art here as well. And for
Yeah.
anyone who doesn't know, so I got it up on the screen now. This is actually the pavilion from Assiniboine Park, which is one of our main attractions in our small city here. Some Americans have called it a village, but it is a city. And yeah, Assiniboine Park is a beautiful place. There's a zoo nearby it, and the pavilion is one of the main kind of buildings. And you really rendered it beautifully, I have to say. Just the symmetry, the lighting, the kind of autumn vibe that it has. So sorry for cutting you off. I just wanted to give that context of the building and what it means in Winnipeg here, but continue.
So I mean, what I'm looking for is buyers in the Web2 space, because now, like, if you look at our NFT marketplace, like our exchange, that gives you this ability that you can buy art through a credit card or a debit card. As soon as you make that transaction, it creates a Crossman wallet for you. So, it gets stored over there. So I think all these features coming in, which is making the Web3 space a lot more accessible, because, the biggest challenge is the tech jargon, which is always going to be there. I feel till the time things get simplified for everybody to use. Like, so I mean, those are the things. I see these structures being created, which is very good for anybody to like operate, right? So when you get into a specific industry, right? You ask about, let's say, we talk about the tech industry, like, so what part of tech do you want to like operate into? So you get more specific, then you get more specific into it. So I think like those structures are being built at the moment, and that is what we actually need in Web3, and specifically the art NFT space, because it's a lot more easier to operate this way. Otherwise, the challenge is you can just go like from one place to another and then just land nowhere. But if you're following these structures, that I want to be very specific to this particular part, so I'm going to follow this structure, I'm going to be very specific with what I want to do, and I clearly see it. So I mean, those things I see are happening, and of course, those weird marketing hooks can always trouble you. That NFT
Yeah, it can get kind of crazy. No, I like your point though, as far as the credit and debit option, because I mean, I come from the Web3 crypto space where it was like either you know how to do it with your wallet and you're using your decentralized option, or you're not actually on chain yet, right? And so that's kind of the Puritan position, right? And then there's also just the fact that what makes a Web 2 or just traditional art collector who has no idea about blockchain Web 3 want to spend the $200, or let's just double check here, right, on the 101. So 3 Sol, you'd be looking at about 500 Canadian dollars, right? And it's awesome. It's a beautiful piece of artwork. Maybe it comes with a physical or something, but I feel like when you're talking to people who don't even see the value in having on-chain art, like I've paid $500 for a few different NFTs just for the sake of having it in my on-chain wallet. But someone who doesn't even know what an on-chain wallet is and is going to a platform like this, and you're asking them to put this on their credit card as a way to support you as an artist, aside from obviously just supporting you as an artist, what's the value in it for them if they don't actually understand NFTs or see the value in having on-chain art? I'm just wondering, like, playing devil's advocate, someone who's like a traditional art collector being asked to buy an NFT with their credit card because they don't want to onboard into actual decentralized wallets, where is the value for them, and how have you kind of navigated that conversation, I guess? Because I get it, like making it easier for your average person out there, I get that. But on the flip side, it's like, is that really the solution? Is that actually letting them know the value of the on-chain art, and then they put it in a custodial wallet, and then we all know the problems with custodial wallets, right? If the platform goes under, or some big blockchain change happens and they don't know about it, and they miss the window to move their art to the new blockchain, like what happens to it? So there's a lot of like potential issues around that whole, let's make it easier and just put it in this custodial wallet for them, so I'm just curious how you navigate that conversation.
So we need to understand, first of all, why do people buy art, right? And there's this very important, like very interesting documentary that I watched a while back, because I am an art buff. I keep on like looking at how did the traditional art world, brings in solutions for these bigger questions, like, that why should I buy art? Like, what is the real world value in it, right? So there are like three reasons that this art critic, like he's one of my favorite. His name is Alistair Sook. He does a lot of really good documentaries. It's not just really about the artist, like their life stories and all. It just talks about real things that, why is somebody paying millions of dollars for a canvas, right? Because those millions of dollars could have gone into buying some other asset that could have been just, a lot more valuable, like a real estate or something, right?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
It's a good question, right? So, what is it that these millionaires tend to spend like so much money into buying art? So like number one solution, like the number one reason that came into that documentary as a, conclusion was they buy it for status. One thing is that people, those who really enjoy this flamboyant, very lavish lifestyle, art plays a very important role in their life. So, if you get into these homes of millionaires, billionaires, they're just, they have like all these, amazing collections, they just try to show off their wealth sometimes.
Yeah, like Jay-Z rapping about his Basquiat's.
So, I mean, that's the number one reason that why people tend to buy. So, like, one biggest advice that art advisors give artists is that find a way to mingle with the rich in the city, right? So, once they are in that mood of like, today I need to buy something lavish, something very artsy, that can be your day, fine. So now, number two reason is something that we talk a lot about in the NFT space also, which is for investment purposes, that today I see the value this artist is building up. So maybe 5 to 10 years down the line, this NFT is going to cost a lot more. And same is the case with the art world also, that today if you buy a $50 million Picasso, definitely in 20, 25 years of time, you can just flip it up for like $200 million, so people will be happy to pay that particular price. So, that's for investment purposes. And the last one is something that is every creator's dream. People, those who buy art for the love of it. That's it. I mean, they don't care about like, I want to flip this for a profit. I don't want to like show off. Like, I just want to look at this particular work of art for the rest of my life, hang it in my space. I mean, that's what I want. So that happens very, very rare. When those are like private collections of a lot of collectors, right? So like in Canada, we have Ken Thompson collection, right? If you've heard of Thompsons. So Thompsons are the one who brought Canada one of the most expensive works of art. I think it was bought in early 2000 for like 80 million or 70 million of Peter Paul Rubens. I think it's in the Art Gallery of Ontario at this moment. I'm not sure. Like they keep on moving these works, so you never know. But when like we as Canadians, like me, I've started to consider myself an Indian Canadian because
let's go.
That's going to be my home. So
that's it. Welcome.
That's the I think we are very blessed that we have these very very important historical works of art in Canada, right? So if we look at these structures and now we look to understand specific psychology of a human being, right? Like I went to this First Fridays thingy in Winnipeg where like artists come together and they talk about like what they're building. So I took the small little print of this building, the pavilion, with me that, hey, this is what I do. And there were like so many people who just came in and talked about it because, this was purely for the love of the city. So they're like, I'm moving out of the city. I don't want to move out because I was born and raised here. I have family here, but I still want to take something from the city, So that is where they were like, I'm kind of like interested in this particular artwork. Like, can you give me a print of it? So, I mean, those are the people that you tend to target and that, yes.
So Yeah, that's
Right?
amazing. How do you handle that conversation then when you have a piece that you've already minted on the blockchain? Are you still selling prints of it? Do you have prints available, physical of versions of the pavilion piece available? And do you ever try to push them back to the on-chain and say, hey, it's also available on-chain, and if you own this one, it's a one of one, and there'll be perks in the future. Maybe you airdrop to your collectors, whatever the case might be.
So, I mean, I keep the NFTs, like that part of the side. I don't sell prints of my artworks that I've mint because, again, this whole idea of NFT is to own something that's very rare, which
Right.
is still in the heads of somebody. Like, you can sell prints, that's not a problem because you own the copyright of a specific artwork, you own the IP. But I think this whole idea of like why somebody buys into a NFT is because it's rare. It is just one of its kind, right? So, I mean, as a creator, I take this responsibility that yes, there is a physical like print that I will love to give to you. Like there's one collection that I did on Wazir, which was like early days experimentation, like different classical dance forms inspired Indian artworks that I did. And I used to sell a physical. I used to like send them a physical, two stickers and a small little 8.5 into 11-inch print to them. And
Nice.
I never sold those like artworks for money again because I understand this whole idea of a non-fungible token is that you are the sole owner of this. So if I tend to like sell a print out of this particular artwork, you will be like, oh, I thought like I am the sole owner of it. Now this guy's also got it, right? So I mean, I will never do that. Like if I were to like sell prints, I will make some other artworks and get into the commercial art space that, hey, this is for commercial. But if you really want to own something that's rare from my end, I have non-fungible tokens. So, you can just get into it. And then I can just help you set up a wallet if you want to do it. But if you don't want to like do it, I would request you to make a transaction through a credit card or debit card. And then we can have this conversation that it can give you access to a secondary market. It can give you access to a lot of airdrops that I'm planning out. Fine.
Have you
So
thought
that
about, sorry, continue.
I think that just depends upon the level of curiosity this other person has in terms of like understanding what else do I have to offer, not just specifically that this the art print that I'm just getting in. So I
Yeah.
mean, this also like helps you like these transactions also help you like with who the real owner of this work is, right? So the biggest problem in the art world at the moment that why art world got into this whole idea of blockchain because this was not meant for the art world, right? This was meant for a very specific financial challenge born out of the 2008 financial crisis, right? That things were not clear and everything needed to be transparent. We could have avoided this blunder. Fine. That's the original narrative from where Bitcoin was born, right? This conversation
Thanks
of
be
blockchain.
thanks be to Satoshi.
Yeah, thanks to and Peter Todd. People are thinking he
Right,
could be
right,
a
right.
Satoshi.
We'll say Peter Todd, whatever. According to HBO, I don't know about all that.
I mean, you should watch. I am also planning to watch that
Yeah, I'll have to watch it. I
documentary
haven't
that
watched it yet, but I still don't believe it.
yeah, like nobody believes in it. I think it's just a marketing stunt that just to find who Satoshi is. But
Yeah.
so I mean, here's the thing with creatives, right? We look at things in a different way. So we saw the blockchain, and we saw like, oh, this can actually help with this whole idea of provenance, right? Who's the real owner of this particular artwork? Now, let's say in 1950s, my great grandfather walked into a Christie's auction and just bought a Picasso, and then a few years later he passed away. Now, how am I supposed to prove it that our family is the real owner of this particular asset, right? How do we do it?
I mean,
So this
yeah.
yeah, so I mean that's where the solution that blockchain was bringing in, right? The long-term solution of
Showing the
like,
provenance, showing the ownership, the chain of ownership. It's definitely a huge transparency bonus there.
yeah, so that's where like this entire art world getting into blockchain started as for me. Like there could have been other reasons too, but from what I analyzed from like reading a lot about art history, like going through a lot of books, like flipping through a lot of pages, watching these documentaries, I'm like, this is this whole problem of provenance that art world has, and this is where blockchain can really help you. And the other benefits come along, like, I mean, there's another NFT collector. His name is Kenny Schachter. I think I watched one of the documentaries. He was talking about that there was this one New York-based artist that the art world really hyped, and his initial work was bought for $10,000 and then flipped for $500,000, and he was never paid even a small little amount out of it. So, I mean, those are the challenges that artists generally face. That there is no profit in the secondary sales, and initially it's just It's like not even giving somebody food to eat. It's just like I'm just giving you air to breathe, right? So it's just like that.
Yeah. So I take it you're firmly on the side of enforcing royalties when it comes to these NFTs. It seems to have become a little bit more of a optional thing. I remember in 2021 it was like, oh, you're gonna get royalties forevermore, and it was just nobody questioned it. And then by the end of 2021 or 2022 they started making it optional on certain platforms because it was eating into the margins of the flippers. And I don't know, I do feel like a lot of marketplaces, not all of them, shout out to exchange.art or object.com and a few others that are really about the art, but definitely there's a lot that have been more about the flip and about the gains and about the kind of trading side of things, which have definitely calmed down quite a bit. But I was curious, I didn't want to lose track of the question I had on the physical piece. So you had this person at this art event, which I definitely have to follow up with you offline about this Friday art event, because I was not familiar with this. I want to check it out. So they're leaving Winnipeg. They want a physical print of this beautiful pavilion piece you've got. You tell them about the blockchain and how you've minted it there, and that's the only place to buy it. Now, if she, followed you there, whether she gets her own on-chain wallet or she uses the credit card to buy it to support you and then have the ownership, would you then be okay with her, A, maybe printing it herself and having a print that she could have a physical copy on the wall, or B, you printing it for her and providing it to her as a physical because she purchased the digital one? I'm just curious if you would be open to that, because I've actually done that with one piece where shout out to Ostru, he's an amazing artist, and I had a collection or a piece that I collected from him, and it had like Lego incorporated in it, and I just really love the art piece. And so I asked him if it would be okay if I printed it for my son's playroom, because I wanted to put it up on his wall, and he just really was appreciative that I asked him, first of all, because I wasn't just going to go print it without getting his approval. And then once I did, he's like, oh, please just send a picture, I just want to see it. So then he was like super stoked that I was able to kind of share that with him. But I know there's some artists who maybe wouldn't like that, and then there's others who say, buy my on-chain art and I'll actually send you the physical. So I'm just curious where you land on that conversation.
Yeah, so there is a physical attached to this specific piece, because I've started to realize how important it is for people to have a physical work, because
especially the Web2 people, right? The traditional people.
No, I think it's with the Web3 people also, right?
Okay.
The whole idea of owning this artwork is physical, right? That, okay, even if I made a transaction on an online NFT marketplace, just give me something physical out of it, because a lot of collectors talk about this thing, right? So we are not in that particular space at the moment where we are I own this JPEG proudly. So this is going to be for the generations who's coming up. This is a conversation.
I'm there, but yeah, you're right. Most people aren't.
This is I've been trying to analyze this too, right? That why haven't we reached to a point where we do not value JPEGs so much? Because, we are coming from that space where our early influences were comic books and, going to physical spaces, going to the movies. And then later on, when we discovered the device, iPhone or Android or anything, then we started to value these JPEGs, right? So then we tend to look at those early, I would say the cover art for Photoshop. Now that becomes very, nostalgic. That if an Adobe tomorrow says that this cover art that we did in our first 1990 when we launched Adobe, you can own it. You just see how crazy people will just go about it.
It would be crazy for sure. And nostalgia always pays. Yeah.
So I mean, those are the factors. I think the generation alpha that's just coming in, people kids born in recently, they are going to be valuing these JPEGs a lot, because we are just kind of moving away from that idea of print media. Comic books
and it's sustainable too, right? The whole sustainability conversation. I'm not to say that printing art is super unsustainable, but if you don't need to print, you don't need to print. You're saving the paper.
Yeah, so I mean, it all depends upon this particular buyer. What is he looking for? Now we have this giant screens that facilitate presentation of NFTs in your homes. So I think with LG Art Labs also, if you know this initiative where LG's got these screens where you can just buy NFTs and from different locations of the world, and then just put it on the display of your homes or offices. I think Token Frame is another
there's a few of them. There's some really good art based or NFT specific screens that are really doing good things. So definitely looking at getting one of those myself, but the price is still, working its way down slowly. It's a little bit up there, but I mean, great points all around. I think it's fascinating to see where things are kind of evolving to and how we're going to handle this kind of transition into the digital world. But I do think that there are a lot of us who do value just the actual token and the art on the chain, on blockchain, and the JPEG itself. And I think that the idea of valuing the data and the actual token and the proof, the on-chain proof that you own that piece of art or that limited edition, is still kind of growing in acceptance. But at the same time, there's like you said, it's kind of a generational change. And I think that it has to also come with an overall value of data, right? Digital data. And that's been something we always return to on Web3 Warriors, is the idea that Web3 should also usher in a new sense of data ownership and caring about how your data is being used, which of course all the big social media companies out there are vehemently against, which is why Meta is not very pro Web3, which is why even X, you know, back when Jack was in charge, they were more pro Web3, and now Elon's not very pro Web3 at all, because in the end, that data conversation directly attacks their main profit line, right? Their main revenue, which is we harvest your data and sell it to the biggest bidder, and we use your data to make sure that advertisers are actually able to micro-target you as much as possible. And Web3 has the potential to completely do away with that business model because it's invasive and it's unethical and it deserves to die a sudden, horrible death. So that's my hope, is that Web3 will actually kill that whole data enterprise, because it's just a mess and it's unethical. So I'm just going to leave that there. We do have a great question in the chat, so thank you, Idris, for that. Shout out K-Bot in the chat, and Afro Beats Coin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate everybody joining the live feed. So Idris has an interesting question. It kind of relates to what both of us are doing in the space, right? Really working at the community level in real life IRL events and trying to advocate for the technology. So he's saying, between you and I, the host and the panelists, what would Web3 North as a concept look like? A collaboration between US, Mexico, and Canada to move blockchain technology forward, and what are some of the challenges that this concept might have to address in unison where countries are working together? That's a very, very big, ambitious thought. I would love to see that, some kind of blockchain NAFTA, North America on the chain, you know. Here in Winnipeg, or in Manitoba, I should say, I'm working with NFTP. Shout out Clarina TP. He's an amazing advocate for the technology, and Grayson and Chris, the four of us have formed On-Chain Manitoba. So we're doing that at a much more micro level in Manitoba, where the technology is not very popular yet. It's not as popular as it is in, say, Ontario or BC, which are other kind of major spots in Manitoba, major provinces where they do have a lot more blockchain stuff happening. So at a micro level, we're working on it. At the Manitoba level, trying to create something like what you're just describing to advocate for the technology. Now, can Canada and America and Mexico get on the same page? And I don't think it has to be a political thing. I don't think the government has to lead it. So yes, I think we could. The challenges would be just, I mean, obviously geographical, demographical, maybe, like, you know, different people have their different views on what the priorities should be. And again, as Karan was saying, you know, under the umbrella of blockchain, you've got the art, you've got the music, you've got the DeFi, you've got the meme coins, and a lot of these different segmentations, again, have very different priorities of what it should be. Now, ideally, they can all play together nicely for the sake of the technology and push things forward. So I'll leave it there. What do you think, Karan? That's my thoughts. It's a big, grandiose, ambitious idea.
Yes, I think geographical locations really plays an important role, but what other things that play an important role is culture, because I think the way somebody in Winnipeg would just approach this particular technology is going to be completely different from the way a Torontonian would do, you know? So the way a Canadian thinks is completely different from the way an American thinks and the way a Mexican thinks, right? So, you know, you just have to like find a middle ground where everybody kind of like is on the same page that, you know, oh, this makes complete sense to three of us, you know, culturally. So I think culture plays a very important role, because I think geography is not a big problem these days when we have an internet connection, right? You can just get on a Zoom call, or like you can just feel like, you know, everybody of us in the same room, you know, we can just get into those conversations, right? But I think culture plays a very important role, your culture conditioning, right? Now, we were talking about, like, me and TP were talking about this in the last, you know, On-Chain Manitoba event, that our concerns towards nature, right? The kind of, you know, waste that is generated in this entire mining process and the energy that is being taken out, right? I mean, it really hurts the nature, right? It it hurts the environment, right? So how can we make this thing very, very sustainable? So, she was talking about like how she gets into understanding how a platform operates from a tech side of things, right? Is it really sustainable? Like, if these people are not really visible about talking about this stuff, it means there's something shady happening at the back, right? So let's not get into that particular platform. Like, that was very insightful conversation. I was like, I am also a big, advocate of sustainability, because that is why you will see my work are very simplistic, minimal, because again, this whole idea of less is more, that is something that I always strongly advocate, that you don't need too many things to like say certain things, right? It's just like very less can actually do a lot more. And I think that is the time when you see that this technology needs to get simplified, because as much as human beings, like, we like to see those complicated structures, we need a simplified solution to operate it, right? Now just imagine that I give you a W16 Bugatti Chiron, and I'm like, these are 25 different controls of, you have to drive this, and you have to first press this button, then go to this button, and then go to this button, right? How complicated things can get. But this W16 engine is just simplified into a steering wheel, into a brake, into a gear. That's it. Those are just the three things that you need. So I think it just depends, like a common ground that we need to have, that all of us like are in this together. Like these are like our common concerns, and then we can just move ahead towards it. I mean, a lot of countries have like, they've had allies, right? That everybody was just on the same page. Like the conversation can get a little political there, like NATO, or like in World War I or II.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, well, you're talking about different countries. It's going to be geopolitical, right? And I think that there's no shortage of crazy things happening in the world right now, and we all pray for peace and an end to all this crazy wars. But on the technology side, sorry.
Culture is the thing. I think cultural factors will be a little challenging to address. Like if everybody needs to be on the same page, because I come with a different culture, different beliefs.
Yeah, but to your point, or to the question, and thank you, Idris. And he says blockchain NAFTA would be awesome. So all right, maybe not everybody would agree, but I'm not opposed to the idea. But I think that it's, yeah, obviously easier said than done, but there are a lot of similarities across North America, right? So all three countries are very multicultural. America and Canada more so than Mexico, but even Mexico is a lot of a bit of a melting pot, or a mosaic, however you want to say it. So all three are multicultural. All three are democratic. All three have fairly vibrant economies, right? And so with that in mind, I do think that there is a lot that we could collaborate on, and there would be a lot of ways to embrace Web3 and crypto and blockchain at a national level across the three. And maybe whoever's in charge of the new NAFTA, I don't even remember what they called it, they renamed it something, but it's some other North American trade agreement, might be interested in looking at that conversation. And I think specifically the supply chain to the trade point, right? They're the whole bringing supply chains onto the blockchain and having more traceability and accountability and transparency on all the different transactions between the three countries. Who knows what kind of innovation that would create? So great question, Idris. I think it's a huge, can of worms that you could open and probably have a full 3-hour conversation on what that would look like and how that should be hashed out. But definitely a cool concept.
I'd just like to add one thing. I think this whole idea of being a global citizenship that's now taking place, because we were just had this idea in the early 60s and 70s when, people started moving across countries, and then slowly this idea was taking shape. And I think that this whole idea, this global culture of being a global citizenship taking place, I think that's where, a lot of these cultural barriers can just go away, because we are now global citizens, right? That's
what the blockchain brings in, right? As much as people hear global citizen and they're either yeah, we're all one huge happy human family, or they're like, oh, dystopian, one world government's trying to run everything and destroy our freedoms, right? So I feel like you either land on either extreme of that concept. But as somebody who likes to look at the nuance of it, I think the reality is that there is already a global framework on the technological level, right? I'm talking to a lot of artists. Our last guest was in I'm already forgetting, Eastern Europe, essentially. And we've had people from India, we've had people from the Middle East, we've had people from Africa. And so the blockchain has already brought us all together. It's just a matter of people accepting it or realizing it. And then at the government level, of course, there should always be sovereignty. There'll always be local currencies. There'll always be a requirement to have a kind of breakdown of government and structure for the sake of, you know, having some order at the kind of national level, right? So I think there's nuance to it. It's, yes, we're global citizens, but countries are always going to have their role to play. And honestly, even the whole concept of democracy that a lot of people thought was an inevitability is becoming much more questioned, right? And so, you know, I hear Vitalik during his early days, a big part of what he was talking about with Ethereum and programmable currency and the ability to do a lot of programmable actions on chain was democratic in nature, right? And it was the idea that we can actually strengthen our systems and bring more accountability and transparency to our systems. Unfortunately, a lot of people think technology and they just want to say, oh, it's going to get hacked, it's going to be corruptible. But the reality is, you know, there's no question that having this on chain, like voting, for example, in a much more easy, transparent way would get rid of a lot of the questions and a lot of the speculation around the results of elections, which, you know, now apparently are questioned all the time, unfortunately. So I think technology is the solution, but there's so many people that fear the technology that I don't know whether we'll ever actually be able to implement that part of the solution, you know?
It comes down to like who's controlling this particular technology. So, you know, even when the FTX collapse happened, you know, I mean, like, a lot of investors lost like millions of dollars because it was on exchange. But, you know, there was a documentary that was made, just, you know, people were like trying to understand what was the emotional state of these particular investors. Because again, you know, just a way to understand that if something like this happens, how do you handle this stuff? And they were just talking about this thing that crypto is not bad. It's just that who's controlling it, right? So it's like, this is where you need to invest yourself. Like, I've lost millions of dollars, but I wasn't very watchful of certain red flags that were there with FTX. But that doesn't mean that the technology is bad, right? So it means like it comes down to this whole idea of like who's controlling it, like who's running these technologies for you.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, we had the joke going back to even 2021, but especially after the FTX collapse, you know, say no to sex. That's it. CEX, you know, you got to say no to the centralized exchanges. That's it. But, you know, it's easier said than done. But like, I wouldn't hold a whole lot of money in any of them. Even Coinbase, which I would say is, you know, one of the better ones, one of the more reliable ones. I still wouldn't put, you know, thousands or definitely not millions of dollars on their platform and hold it there. I think that was part of the other question that you had, Idris. Is there a global organization that's already championing the blockchain technology adoption and legislation? I have to say Coinbase, I think, is one of the ones really doing this properly. As someone, like, I attended the Blockchain Futurist event in Toronto, and I was able to actually speak to Coinbase's head of Canadian operations, and we talked a lot about kind of some of the pain points, but also the way that they're handling the regulations and the whole conversation at the kind of political level, and how important it is to really not be partisan. You know, I know, especially right now with the election happening in America, you know, a lot of people gave Trump big kudos for coming out early and powerfully for crypto, and outspoken for it when Biden was very, very quiet or even anti-crypto. I think Kamala has tried to soften the stance of the Democrats, but, you know, you also saw the flip side of it, right? No, he brought this up. He brought it up to me. The Coinbase guy in Canada was talking about Trump, not in a negative or positive way, just in a reality way, right? That it became a somewhat partisan issue in the States, and that actually, you know, yeah, sure, people say if Trump wins, it's going to be great, but the reality is whether or not he wins, it's not the way that the industry wants to be positioned. You do not want to be positioned where, oh, only this side likes you, therefore if the other side wins, they're not going to like you, and they're going to be, you know, opposed to what you're trying to bring in, the innovations. So I think both sides are not going to be able to stop the innovation, and hopefully both sides are open to really supporting the innovation and helping it grow in a mature way and in a safe way, of course. But, you know, we just saw TD Bank, which is one of our big banks here in Canada, got slapped with a $3 billion fine from the Americans for basically allowing money laundering on their platform or on their bank. So, and that had nothing to do with crypto at all. So that's just an example of, obviously the big banks still have their own, you know, criminal aspects as well that still get through even without crypto. So you can't turn around and act like crypto's this big evil, which unfortunately a lot in the American political sphere still do, both on the Republican and Democrat side. There are those who really hate crypto, but in Canada I honestly think our regulators by the most part have been open to it and very pro crypto, and Ethereum, Bitcoin have had their ETFs here in Canada for like going on 3 years now. So I don't know. I feel good about Canadian regulators and across party lines, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, just there's this space, Crypto Canadians, that's hosted by Blockchain Nord. So just a quick shout out to them. They host these very quick spaces about like what's happening, everything crypto on Thursdays. Yeah. So I think maybe you should just follow them and get into this.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar. I've met Flo actually a couple times. He's the main host there. Yeah, he's a cool guy. I got to get on that. Yeah,
we've been just chatting. I think it was this week or the last week. There's this same concern that Canada has been good for crypto lately. I mean, just it's not like going directly after certain people and punishing them with what they are trying to do, but the authorities have been open to the conversation that, hey, what really is happening? Like, what are you trying to build? Let's just have this conversation rather than we're just trying to slap you with some sort of a lawsuit or something. So,
yeah, not trying to demonize it or anything. Yeah, exactly.
That's why. I mean, there are other challenges too in Canada. Like the biggest thing is the taxes that people talk about. Like, huge amounts of taxes to be paid on like capital gains or like the business gains. The two ways that crypto or NFTs get taxed. But again, but still, I think Canada has had a very positive environment for this ecosystem to grow.
Yeah, and for the most part, Canada taxes it when you off-ramp it, right? So they're not really like reaching into all your trades on chain and kind of like assessing your gains and losses and all that, which I feel like the SEC and the American IRS has really apparently been very much like wanting to know, how much have your NFT values increased this year versus last year. And it's thank God the Canadian regulators are not treating it that way, and frankly that just sounds crazy to me, but is what it is. And yes, we veered a little bit into politics here, so thank you, Idris, for that question. With that, I want to change topics a little bit and go back to your art process, but I think it's a very important question as far as the regulations.
These conversations are important, even though like the art conversations that I post, it gets a little political in between, and then we just have to hope that Elon is not listening to our Twitter space that we are talking about. But I think these conversations are important because it just opens up your brains to look into like, I haven't thought about this. A lot of creators came in like recently when all of these marketplaces were going down, and they said that you could just find your NFTs on OpenSea. We couldn't find them, and then we were like, where are my NFTs? Where are my works?
You had to know how to look into your wallet and really, get into there and see.
So this whole idea of like storage became such a concern. So even though like new NFT marketplaces coming in, the new collectors there with like a lot of like big pockets, we are like, no, first let us know how are you going to like store these NFTs, like what is your contract, like who are the people involved, because there are like so many NFT marketplaces operational these days, we don't even know who these people are running them, right?
Oh, it's crazy.
There's this whole idea of like the system being decentralized and transparent is being missed, because that is what Web3 is all about, transparency first. So
yeah, and that's to the point I was asking earlier as far as the credit and debit option, right? And this is what I've seen, to your point, with a lot of these marketplaces that come out, and the storage is not clear. It's not clear that like, okay, if I use my credit card to buy this and it goes into this custodial wallet, is it simple for me to just transfer it into my own wallet? Because I'm not going to name any names, but there was one that's a fairly popular platform where I just assumed I would be able to transfer it. I can't remember why I ended up using credit card. I think I just was short on Ethereum, and I was like, let me try this credit card option, whatever. And so I did it. And then when it was in their custodial wallet, all of a sudden I'm told, oh, we don't have the feature to move it into your own, sovereign wallet at this time. And I don't even think I've gone back to that platform since. It's probably still sitting in their custodial wallet. So it's like annoying, right? Because like I would have just moved it immediately into my own wallet. But I found out after the fact, I had purchased it, that, oh, that feature's not live yet, but it will be 3 months, Q3 will have that ready to go. They're like, oh, okay. So I just think to your point, it's a very important point as far as how is it being stored, and is it truly on chain, you know, or is it just in some custodial wallet and you have the Ethereum or the Tezos, logos on there, but it's not actually fully on chain yet. So very important point. And then to your other point about the patterns, that's part of the patterns too, right? So those kind of like grifts that used to work because people were like, oh, new platform, yeah, let's go. Now it's like, wait a minute, new platform, like what are you actually saying? Like, how are you holding my NFTs? So there's a little bit of a learning process with every pattern, with every cycle that we go through, right? Hopefully people are becoming smarter and not just jumping onto the new shiny object, right?
Like people are like more interested in educating themselves more about tech, I would say specifically artists, because they just want to have their own website, deploy their own smart contracts on chain, and not go on a specifically any NFT marketplace. So generate their own IPFS hash and take help of somebody who's a smart contract expert and just help them build this particular website. Because again, this whole idea of storage is being questioned repeatedly because the contracts were like not very well written, the things were not on chain, and this whole idea of NFTs being questioned like after the things going down. So it's I think it's affecting both the creators and collectors too, because somebody who took like days or years to like work on a creation, and then somebody putting their hard-earned money into something, and then just all of a sudden all of this thing is lost. So it's just affecting
very, very discouraging. It's not helpful, not helpful for the space at all, for sure. Yeah, amazing. So I'm curious, going to your art, I've had a bunch of your beautiful art on the screen here and across different platforms. So you've got some on Solana, you've got some on Tezos with Object, Solana with Exchange.art, and Ethereum on Known Origin and Foundation. And across the different platforms, I've noticed you've got a little bit of different styles. Looking at the Known Origin platform, and this might have been one of your first NFTs that you minted. It says it's 2 years ago now. The Mystic one, where you've got like a lot of different symbolism of India. You got a snake, tiger, just cool bearded guy, all these different vibes in here. I'm curious how you made it, and I'm curious about what made you make an art piece like this compared to a lot of the other work, like you said, is a lot more flat and a lot more kind of symmetrical with straight lines and all of that. But I really loved this Mystic piece, and I was wondering if you plan on relisting it, because I realize it's not listed currently on Known Origin. So I just wanted a little bit of background on it because I really dig it.
Yeah. So it's listed on OpenSea now because Known Origin is going down.
Okay.
But they've like given you this option, so I just went on OpenSea and relisted it there. But yeah, this whole idea was like when I was back in college, I was this is a creation from 2016 or 17. So this is one of the old works, physical works that I did.
Nice.
It took me like a month to like complete this entire artwork.
It's amazing, man. It really is it's beautiful.
It's a lot of thought that has gone into like researching stuff. So here's the thing: like artists are not like people those who create beautiful images, but they are somebody who's great at research. I mean, the amount of books that you have to read, the amount of like scholars you have to reach, that hey, I'm trying to attempt this, am I heading in the right direction, or like do I need to pivot from here? So this was a classroom exercise that was given to us, that pick one particular word. It could be a country, it could be an emotion, it could be anything, and just try to depict it in the most surreal fashion, or use the idea of symbolism or abstract, or like anything that you want to do. It was like an open ground. So at that point, I used to like go out and sketch a lot. Like it's doing a lot of pen and ink work. So I was like, why don't I like use this particular technique? But first of all, I need my big idea. So I mean, I've always been concerned about the representation of the South Asian artist in the art world, because the art world just positions us as somebody who's got like a lot of historical objects, artworks, and buildings. But what about the contemporary South Asian artists, right? What about them, right? So they might just get like some sort of a momentary like benefit or recognition in the art world, but in the long term, like you just go back to all those Picassos and Van Goghs and all. I mean, there's nothing wrong, like that there are influences of these people on me a lot, but I was like, what is the representation of a South Asian artist in the contemporary art space? Because we've got all these techniques that our old masters in South Asia have come up with. They've taught us, they've given us their legacy. We need to protect it. We need to use these techniques to produce all of these things, right? So I was just getting inspired from traditional techniques, or like pen and ink, and then there are like a lot of different techniques that the Indian artists have used. But Then I was like, if I have to speak to the West, what do I do? So, this the simple answer to this question is that if somebody speaks French, speak French with them. If somebody speaks English, speak English with them.
Right,
So
right.
I started looking at like what are the different techniques evolved in the West because people tend to relate to that more. Otherwise, they will be just looking at my work as another very historic, very an Indian artifact that somebody's trying to produce. So, it won't be a part of that contemporary conversation of art. So I started using these pen and ink techniques. So there's this one old master by the name of Albert Dürer. So if you look at his pen and ink work, that is where this whole idea was inspired. So started reading about it. I started reading about India as a whole and what elements could represent it so that I can just put this piece in the Western conversation, right? So started to watch like a lot of YouTube videos of like what people think about when they hear the word India. So somebody said that it's a mystical place, right? People like meditate, and then people say, oh, there are like different areas there. There's a beach there. There are like all these different terrains that you can just experience in one place. And then some people were like, oh, there are temples there. So I came down to like these 15, 20 different objects, and then I just brought them in a one particular single, composition, and then it took me 1 month to just render this. So this is one artwork that I have back home. It's in my home, but yeah, I
Wow.
mean, just this is all listed there. I think it's for 1 ETH maybe because
Yeah,
I
I
mean
see.
it's a fair price. It's not like too pricey as per the art world standards too, but the amount of research that has gone into it and the amount of thought and the amount of the technique and this whole idea that has gone into it, I think that's a fair price to list it. But yeah,
For sure,
that
for
is the
sure.
process. Yeah, that's the process. A lot of research, a lot of like speaking to people, and I think that's when you get very good feedback from people. Those who look at it, they're like, "Wow!" Like that aha moment. So you're like, "Yes, all of this research that I've done, my core heart and soul that has gone into this creation, even though somebody's not buying it today, it's fine." But they give you this, reaction that, "Wow, I'm just spellbound with this creation."
It
So
is, yeah, amazing. And that background you just provided makes it that much better. It's really jumping out. Definitely one Ethereum is more than fair. Are you planning to share the physical with that at one Ethereum?
I mean, I am thinking to like share it, but it's a little older like creation. So I'm going back to India in March. I'm gonna get all these artworks in Canada and then just try to find buyers for it. For
Nice,
sure, it's open. It's
nice.
open. They're
That's
going to be
amazing.
no, yeah. And this thing I keep on mentioning that if you invest into me, if you invest into any of my artworks, I am not going to sell any prints and just go after quick bucks because these NFTs are just meant for you. You will not see me like selling all these prints or
Nice.
anything like that. I will never do that because this is the rarity, the idea of rarity of NFTs
Mm.
needs to be maintained with your artworks.
Yeah,
And I really like this idea when creators are like, they will mint one artwork as on chain, they will sell it there, and they will just start selling prints of it. And I'm like, this whole idea of rarity is gone. Like, why do you need to sell it as a non-fungible token? You can just go in the traditional art market, sell one print, this giant canvas that you have, then you just reproduce prints, and then you can just make that money, right? So that business model, that particular revenue generation model works there. But in the case of NFTs, that just keep it very rare, right?
no, I
So
like your angle, and I definitely have seen a lot of people doing that where they take
Mhm.
NFT art that was popular and then end up selling it as prints, which is definitely not illegal, definitely not even maybe unethical. I would say it's not, but at the same time, to your point, to value the NFT collectors and to see it as wanting to enforce the rarity and enforce the ownership of having that token, I can see your side of it, and definitely
Yeah.
makes sense. It does look like that one Ethereum listing has expired at this time, so you might want to relist that. But definitely, everybody go check that out. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece, Mystic by Karan Pal. You can find it for now on known origin as well, which apparently is going down. So I didn't actually know that. Interesting. So moving over to your exchange.art, which definitely seems to be sharing a lot more of your graphic design background, really beautiful straight lines, a lot of cool symmetry, a lot of symbolism as well. We talked through a little bit of the pavilion piece. I'm curious about these limited edition art pieces that you've created. They all kind of blue and white with a different symbol in the middle, whether it's the umbrella or the butterfly, or I don't know, what is this, a weaving table? Like
A
So
spinning wheel. It's a
spinning
spinning
wheel.
wheel.
Okay.
It's a spinning
So
wheel.
yeah, just curious. Talk us through some of these. So there's editions of 20. They're still available at point 0.2 Solana. Sold a few of them. Congrats. And yeah, what's the process behind these three limited
So,
edition pieces?
so I made these when I moved to Winnipeg recently.
Nice.
So, I mean, this whole idea of like that I'm trying to build into, because, it's a process. So I'm not going to delist any of my artworks just to make my portfolio look very good. But, it just tells you that how I have moved from this pen and ink, very traditional. So if you go to my foundation, semi-realistic work to this coming down to this very graphic work. So it has been a journey, like discovering that, what is it that I really want to do. So you're just trying into like dabble into different narratives, different works, till the time you come down to this one particular technique that you want to do. So the way I describe is that my technique is inspired from the details of the East and the elegance of the West. So the details of the East is like we come from a very beautiful culture. We are very detailed into like, our art forms. So if you look at a lot of Indian art forms, they're like very, very detailed, very, very colorful, but still, this whole idea of minimalism and simplicity that was evolved is also something that really inspires me. So there are like a lot of these graphic design principles, again, coming down to this whole idea of simplicity, symbolism, minimalism. So, so I try to like bring these two narratives together into like one particular artwork. So what I wanted to do was that, a lot of like I'm Indian, but I live in Canada. So I have both these influences of these two cultures. So I was like, what are the kind of an objects that I can just put into these compositions? Because if you look at one another composition that I have on known origin is Namaskaram, which is an Indian card inspired like composition, which is one of the classical dance forms. So I got hooked to this idea that why don't we use this idea of cards, like a whole idea of reflection, a whole idea of like, this very playful composition, and then build up my narratives around this particular technique. So it kind of like follows that particular idea too. So this whole idea of doing this in blue was that I started to feel a lot blue because, I didn't have any friends over here. So I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, so I tend to like spend some more time like into creating art. And I don't know, like this happens like when you like this is a very artist thing that when you are like very happy, you would just create something very colorful. That happens with me. And when you're just going down a little, so the creations tend to get a lot blue. So I just got inspired from different objects because at that particular time I was reading about it. So there is a hand fan, there is a spinning wheel, there is a butterfly. So all these old objects put in a contemporary fashion from both these cultures. So, I mean, that's what the entire process was, the thinking that a spinning wheel and then, these hand fans and these cube-like patterns, that is evolved in the West. So, I mean, bringing these two cultures together into these three things, the butterfly effect, the spinning wheel, and, that was the whole idea of this particular small three series that I wanted to do because of course, I was enjoying this new particular city and the energy and the art that it has, but it was just like I was very lonely at the time. I was like, I don't know people there. I don't have friends there. Like, what am I supposed to do? So again, like the all these two cultures really inspired me. But yeah, there's a still happiness to it. I would say it is still like
Yeah, it's not
it's a
like a dark blue, It's a nice sky blue. It's very. I
nice
think it's
side.
it's an uplifting vibe. It's not. Doesn't seem gloomy at all. I really like it. Yeah.
So it's also like it's a certain stillness to it. There's a still happy vibe to it, but still, it's blue in nature. It just tells you that, my state of mind at that particular period of time. But yeah, appreciation for both the cultures, both the countries. That is what I'm trying to do with these creations. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I grabbed the butterfly effect one. I vibe with that one, but they're all very beautiful. And what are your thoughts on Exchange.art as a platform? Are you newer to Solana? How have you found it? Are you collecting art on Solana as well? What are your thoughts on Exchange.art? I've been a big fan of it. I don't know if you remember Form Function. It was kind of previous. That was the one that was working. I think they overlapped a bit, but for whatever reason, Form Function went under, which I thought was actually a really cool Solana-based art platform. I don't know where they mishandled something, but they ended up going under, and they kind of pushed everyone over to Exchange.art, which is also a pretty cool platform. But yeah, what are your thoughts on art on Solana specifically? And I think Exchange.art seems to be the main marketing exchange for Solana art.
So I think this whole idea of being very blockchain specific to the art is something that I don't dive into specifically. Like you cannot just say that, oh, this is very Tezos specific or this is very Ethereum specific. It's just that these chains give you like different advantages, right? So remember the time when people were paying $100 of Ethereum gas fees to like put their work on chain. It was just crazy, right?
It is
And
crazy.
there was a solution needed there, and that's where base and all these L2s came into action, right? That we're just going to divert this network, like divert this traffic on the network into our L2s, just to make the entire ecosystem a lot more accessible, both for the artists and for the collectors. Because if I used to pay $100 worth of gas fee, some collector is paying $300 of gas fee just to acquire that particular transaction, right? So which
Yeah.
is $500 just gone into a particular transaction for $1,000 work of art. So that's just
It is insane. I remember those days of fighting over PFPs and people were paying insane amounts of gas, like $500,000, like ridiculous, just because the traffic was so heavy, right?
So I think over a period of time, what I've seen is, of course, like Solana gets you that particular benefits that, it's quite very fast. It's a lot more accessible, it's a lot more affordable in terms of like creators minting on it or like collectors buying it. But I think those are the benefits that people see on Solana. But I think when it comes to art, I mean, art has no particular, like, I would not say that this art is meant for Ethereum, but you will see again, I will just go back to patterns and structures that in terms of like, privilege, in terms of like status, like an Ethereum sale is always the ETH sale. That's like the prestigious sale for a particular creator, right? That, oh, I got a ETH sale today, right? A two ETH sale. So that's the prestige. Then it's followed by Solana that I got a 3 Sol, I got a 1.5 Sol. So when I got a 1.5 Sol sale this year, it was second in the list of that prestige that, oh, a Solana sale for 1.5. So that's a lot, right? And then you come to your experimental blockchains, which is your Tezos, that I'm working on this idea. I don't know like how will the creators react to it or collectors react to it. So let me go on object. So I mean, those are the different structures. Again, going back to this whole idea of patterns and specifically like NFTs and marketplaces. So if I were to like put my masterpiece that I've spent like hours and days and maybe years to work on, I would prefer Ethereum because the kind of this whole narrative that is being built that the prestigious art sale happens on Ethereum and followed by Solana and then followed by Tezos, which is your experimental ground. But yeah, coming down to the question, exchange art has been very good, like in terms of like the community that they've built. I hosted a space with exchange art CEO Larissa a while back. So
Wow.
we got to know like because there's this whole idea of creators criticizing the platform is not something that I really like. I'm like, what is the platform expecting from creators too? Because this is not like me versus you. We both are in this together. So let's just have this conversation. So I was just asking her that or these initially there were like big sales happening on exchange. I remember this one particular artist, I think it was John. He got like over $2 million worth of sale on exchange.
Damn.
So so I'm like, that's great. Like the way these people have, set up an open ground for artists to operate. They are not trying to impose that this is the only kind of an art that I'm going to promote as a platform. So that is not what they do. And she was quite very visible, and she's quite very visible today also. Like, you can just slide into her DMs and talk about stuff. She
Nice.
was
Well, I would love to have her on the show, so I'm gonna have to get a connection through you and see if we can have that conversation. Because I agree, Exchange.art is doing a lot of stuff right, frankly,
yeah.
and I really love it. It's funny you mentioned that as far as random sales. What I do sometimes, especially with one-of-one pieces, but sometimes with limited editions as well. I'll buy it, hold on to it for a while, a few months or something. But when I do relist it, I always relist it at like, 5x or 10x or whatever I think, I would be comfortable. It's not the question of like, what do I think I can sell it at? The question to me is, what am I comfortable losing this for? So that I'll put it at like a fairly high price with zero expectations of selling it. But I had an amazing piece by Gustav. Shout out to Gustav T. He's an amazing artist in the space that I had relisted at like, I don't even remember now. I think it was 3 or 4 Solana at the time. And someone actually bought it, and I was shocked, and I was like, okay, that's amazing. It's helpful, a little bit of revenue. But to your point, I think that's the way for for
Yeah,
people to
that's
treat
good,
NFT
right?
art, I think, but
Yeah,
not
I
to,
think they're
tell
very
people what to do.
respectful towards the artist too. Like, the community is great. You can just connect. You know who the founders are, first of all. That's very important. I think
Yeah.
the same goes for Wallet Bubbles. If that's another Solana-based platform, where you can just mint your NFTs. And, I mean, that's also a great platform because, you know who the founders are.
Sorry,
They,
which one? Not Magic Eden?
no, so Wallet Bubbles.
Wallet Bubbles? Okay, I haven't tried that one yet.
Yeah, so that's also Solana based, but yeah, I mean, it's also great to see because recently I got into a space where the founders were there. I went into the space, I asked about the same question: How are you storing my NFTs? Like, what's happening there? Because again, the community is very vibrant. It's very interconnected. Like the collectors, the creators, the people, those who are running this particular marketplace is another. That it's an interconnected, like a small little village of like people, those who know each other. So I mean, that's a great
Is
place to
that
be.
walletbubbles.io or what's the URL?
Wait, let me just check. I think it's Wallet Bubbles. I'm still not there, but I
Okay,
think
okay. No
if you
problem.
just
I just wasn't familiar.
walletbubbles.com.
.com?
Walletbubbles.com.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll check it out after. That's interesting. Always down to hear about new art marketplaces. I actually collected my first cello NFT earlier today.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. I didn't know cello even had an NFT art place. So
Yeah, there's
yeah.
a lot happening. You should check out Drip House also. I mean,
Oh, I
you
love
get
Drip.house. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Drip for sure.
yeah,
Drip's got a
that,
cool
that Drip's
platform. It's a little bit, different, definitely. Not just like go buy art. It's like, oh, be part of this community, be part of that community, and then they just airdrop you random pieces. Some of them you want, some of them you might not want, but yeah, Drip.house is another really cool one. So that's drip.haus for any listeners out there. Go check that out. Another Solana platform with a lot of art and really cool creators on there. So I know we're well over the 1 hour mark already, Karan, so I want to respect your time, but I do have a few other questions here before we wrap up. I'm just curious, we alluded to it earlier talking about on-chain Manitoba and doing, real IRL work to try to advance the technology and, raise awareness, especially among artists, but really just people in general. Why do you do a lot of IRL events? I know you did one in Kingston, Ontario recently, right? And why do you think they are so important? It's been a recurring theme on the show here as well. I've been to NFT NYC, 3 years in a row now. I like to go to Web3 events at Art Basel. Obviously, Blockchain Futurist in Toronto is another one I'm trying to get to regularly now. So I definitely agree with you that it's important to be out there in real life and connecting with people that see the value in the space. But why do you do it? And you seem to be especially focused on really making sure you're out there and also hosting spaces, which are kind of a digital version of an event where people can actually jump in and talk about their art. So why do you do so many IRL events, and why do you think it's important?
So I think like a lot of artists are still not on board with Web3. That's what I've seen. Like they would just come in, they would feel uncomfortable, they would leave. So this is a big problem. Like even though the crypto ecosystem has grown to like $2.5 trillion being in the ecosystem, but the NFT market is still what, like over $500 billion, right? Which is not like it can grow big, like, but still, this whole idea of not educating a particular artist and just focusing on the other things. Like, I mean, I wasn't really sold to this idea. So it's like, how do I just build this community where these artists are like, feeling welcomed and they feel like, this is the place where I can just get some sort of a bigger benefit in terms of visibility first, because, the local landscape might not give you the visibility. Like, so do you see how the Canadian artists like are getting so much of appreciation in some other part of the world because of the beautiful landscape that they do over here? It's just happening through Web3 and NFTs, right? So I mean, those conversations need to happen. Like you need to provide a safe space for them because what they understand, one thing is that NFTs is some sort of a format that would just make them millions of dollars overnight, or like they think that, oh, this is some sort of a scammy space where I don't want my art to go. So I mean, you have to create that safe space and you have to be big on education. So I think that's where St. Lawrence College, where I went college to, I mean, we've built this Web3 space there. Every Friday, if somebody is in Kingston or like areas around, just go to the innovation hub of St. Lawrence College every Friday, 3 to 5. There's a virtual reality space there. There's a conversation around blockchain. There's conversations around AI. There's conversation around NFTs. So, I mean, those things are happening there because the kids, basically, specifically the younger adults, these are the ones people who are going to take this thing forward, right? So it's very important to like plant that seed of this innovation and this whole idea of blockchain into their heads. So I mean, that's where this all of these things are important. And people are generally curious. Like we've gone past through that phase where people either had an extreme opinion about NFTs being dead, or NFTs, or they're just generally curious. Now you see that there's a middle ground, right? People are neutral. They're getting neutral. They're like, okay, I see this has been there for like over 7 8 years now. It's not a fad, I understand, but now I need some help in understanding how this ecosystem works, right? So I'm an
Mm.
artist, I do this particular thing. So that's where, you need to create these town hall kind of like meetings where you are like bringing the experts. And I'm more of a facilitator. I'm not like really like a tech expert or something. I'm an artist at the end of the day, but I like to facilitate these conversations because the bigger benefit that I have enjoyed, that is something that the artist can do. But for that, you need to have that space. I think the
Mm.
other challenge is that in the NFT space, we've started to behave like bots, which I really don't like. People are just getting up in the morning, posting about like a new art listed, blah blah blah, and there's
Yeah.
no human conversations about. So recently, I changed my entire Twitter strategy, the way I was posting it for the last 1 year. I've gotten like over 3,000 followers, over like a million impressions. Like, so that has all happened because I started to keep my conversations very, very human. Sometimes I tend to poke my friends that, oh, there's this funny guy who does all of these things. Like, so, there are like concerns, like human conversations were missing. So I was like, let me just take this initiative and, create this space, because even the other art shell spaces were just about like people coming up and talking about that, this is the art that I do. It's listed on this particular platform, and this is the money you can pay me. That's it. And I'm like, no, man, this is just tell me more about it. Like,
Yeah, give me your story. Tell me story. Get me hooked in.
more
And to your
about what
point, how
it can.
important do you think thank you for sharing that, by the way. And I was sharing the the post that you made, I think it was earlier today, yeah, about velocity, and you had some cool pictures there from the event. So yeah, kudos to you, man. And I agree 100%. Having those conversations in real life just makes it, that much more real. I was curious, looking at kind of the fact that you said St. Lawrence College is doing like every Friday, they have these Web3 slash VR slash AI kind of events where they talk about the technology. And we know, of course, Ethereum was born out of Waterloo. And so there is a very kind of academic bend towards crypto. And I think it still is. The most excited people are probably nerdy students, frankly, and techie people. Some gamers are slowly coming around to it, but frankly, gamers aren't even like super pro crypto at this stage right now. So I'm just curious, how important do you think it is to kind of lean into the academic communities and the universities and colleges? And do you think that will be kind of expanding from there? And do you think that it's a good thing that things tend to be very academic kind of focused when it comes to a lot of these events?
I mean, it just depends. But yeah, I mean, you've already answered the question that Ethereum was born out of an educational institution, right?
Right.
It's the case with CryptoPunks, right? So the
Mm.
founders, Matt and John, they're like University of Toronto graduates, right? Those are the one people who founded Larva Labs. So, the
No doubt.
importance of educational institutions have played in shaping these technology is just something that we do not acknowledge a lot in the space, I feel.
Mm.
And that's where like a lot of people are like pushing this idea of incorporating this whole idea of blockchain into their curriculums, into their systems, that we need to teach these things to them, because just look at what people are doing with it, right? So I mean, that's what a lot of my one of my faculties is also a collector. Like, that's how I met him. Like, so I didn't take his course because he was into something other. He used to teach something else. I think he used to teach computer technician or something, like
Mm.
specifically something very coding specific or something very tech specific. But I was a digital marketing student, so one of my faculties knew that I'm somebody who's doing a lot of NFTs, a lot of Web3 stuff. And when these faculties meet in their like private conversations, they're told that, okay, I know this kid in my class and he's doing all of these stuff and you guys should connect. That's how I connected with this faculty. I also got into his podcast, on the blockchain. Michael, I think you should bring him on this show
Yeah,
too.
that's amazing. There's another blockchain podcaster in Winnipeg. Come on. Yeah,
No,
come.
he said he's based in Kingston,
Oh,
but
Kingston, Ontario. Okay, that makes sense. So he's in St. Lawrence, you're saying, faculty.
yeah,
Okay,
that's what he's a
cool.
faculty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely connect me with them. Always looking to collaborate and meet more blockchain advocates and people in the space.
Yeah.
And
So
share that episode too. I'd
yeah,
love to
sure,
check it out.
sure. So that was my first podcast. So, I mean, that's how you see, the importance of education institutions. Like even if you get into the blockchain not spaces, there are like faculties from George Brown College coming in and talking about like, how are they trying to incorporate this entire ecosystem into their like, curriculums, and how do they want to teach blockchain and AI specifically to their students, because they are the ones who are going to take this thing forward, right? And I
100%.
think this whole environment of a university which is very research focused, right? If you go to a corporate environment, sometimes it's just so fast paced. I think research needs its time, right? It needs to like slow down, think, rethink, do, redo. You need all
Mm.
these resources, and I think that's where a university or a college environment really plays the role. So I mean, now I'm just like I go to work, but yeah, again I work at a university, which is great because again, I'm just getting that environment of like
Yeah.
something that's very research focused, a little slower because you need to think, rethink, do, redo. I mean, those are the things that a university provides you. So I think it's very important that some or the other way we just find a way that get incorporated into the syllabus or like the curriculum of different you know subjects where it is relevant, and
Yeah.
specifically art schools, I would say, because they are the ones ignoring it, and I don't know why.
Seems to be the case, yeah. And I don't think we are relying on the academia to really like take us there, but it's definitely a key integral part of like the actual technology and the adoption of the technology. Like you say, Larva Labs, like a lot of these like the biggest brands in the space right now were born out of basically a cluster of students that were just nerding out on the blockchain and creating really cool projects, and they end up getting popular, and then people want to buy into it. So definitely really cool, important points. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm curious, I got to ask, and I know we've looked at your object collections, your foundation collections, your Solana exchange.art collections. Do you have a favorite blockchain at all when you look at kind of the story behind all of them, the purposes behind all of them? I know you mentioned Ethereum kind of being that one for the high dollar art or the high value art as you see it, but do you have like a favorite that you really would advocate and kind of say is your favorite chain, or are you very, very agnostic?
So I think it again depends upon the context. Like if you talk about like me
Just
aiming
like
to
the
be
mission, like a mission of a blockchain.
so I mean, if I also want to like I have big ambitions or like going ahead. It's not like I'm just doing this for fun. Like a lot of planning goes into like putting out these events. A lot of planning goes into like hosting these spaces that I have to like think, rethink through an entire month or an entire year, that what am I supposed to do next year, so that just also gives a lot of my collectors this confidence that, hey, he's just thinking, he's just going into this direction. So anyways, we are not losing on the art that we want from him or like the efforts that he's doing. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, of course, the prestigious is the Ethereum sale. That's what I always go after. That if somebody gets hold of Mystic, that'll be like a life-changing moment, because at the moment I'm just looking for that one bullseye moment to happen to me, that a bigger sale happened or something big happened or some bigger. I reach out to people a lot of times, like these bigger names in the space, and it's very difficult to get a hold of them. I'm like, I want to host this space with you. I'm curious
Yeah.
to learn more about you. So I mean, like, I'm still waiting for that bullseye moment to happen with me. That yes, this changed the entire trajectory for me. So that's.
I
But
love it.
again, it's a process. Just to start pushing it. But yeah, Ethereum,
Amazing.
I feel, is one of the most important blockchain at the moment, like followed by Solana, Tezos, and the other ones,
Mm.
because just look at it, man. I mean, like over 4,000 decentralized applications or layer ones. Not even talking about layer twos. Like,
Right.
that's other space, right? So
Yeah.
I think Ethereum is something that has produced real value to its investors, to its creators over a period of time.
Yeah.
While Solana is great too, but again, it's just all about meme coins on Solana these days. So I'm
It's a
like,
lot of meme coins. I have a lot of respect, whether it's drip.house, there's a lot of really amazing art going on there, whether exchange.art, I'll definitely check out this Wallet Bubbles one as well. But I think the art community is real and alive on a Solana. And so I'm excited about what that means. I think when it comes to kind of overarching criticisms of Solana, there's a lot of VC money in it. There's a lot of people who, if tomorrow decided,
we were talking about this. I was like, so one of the creator pointed out this thing, like, do you guys feel Solana is kind of like a lot centralized these days because of all of this VC money? And it was like, oh, that's something. It's like a night, like a very late night kind of a conversation happening in a Twitter space where this guy is coming up with his insight, and he's like, "Oh, I feel this is getting a lot more centralized. So let's go back on ETH or Tezos because I do not feel comfortable with what
It's been an ongoing criticism of Solana. Like, they have nowhere near the network effect that Ethereum has. They have nowhere near the amount of really decentralized nodes that Ethereum has, and they've also gone down a handful of times, whereas Ethereum and Bitcoin, and I think even Tezos, to their credit, have not, and so they're one of the only blockchains that have kind of had critical failures and then just kind of moved on and been like, it's fine, it'll be okay, and it's just like, okay, sure, and the people that advocate for it say, it's okay, you just move fast and break things, but you fix them and you get stronger after, to me, all that matters is that the team is there for the long haul, and it does seem like the core team is there for the long haul. And so while I definitely see the value in full decentralization, and if I have to say, I always will say Ethereum's kind of my favorite, just because of the Canadian nature of it. I also think that the decentralized network is fully decentralized to a point where even though there are still serious points of centralization, especially with these central exchanges like a Coinbase and others that have a really, really huge chunk of the Ethereum network. And if they were to offload it, it would definitely completely tank the price of Ethereum, but the network would still survive, and that's what matters, right? So for me personally, of course, Bitcoin's always the OG, but when it comes to the NFT conversation, Ethereum's always going to be my favorite, kind of unapologetically. But I have a big collection on Tezos. I think I have over almost 150 to 200 pieces of art on Tezos. I have a lot of art on Ethereum, a lot of art across Solana, and I really just love to support artists any way that I can. Like I said, I just collected a cello piece this morning, which is beautiful. So, to me, it's less about the blockchain, but if I have to say it, I'll have no problems, pretty much bigging up Ethereum. And to your point about the layer twos, all those layer twos, Base, all these other ones, they rely on that decentralized foundation of Ethereum. And there's a reason they're doing the L2 on Ethereum and not looking at either creating something from scratch or, going on creating an L2 on other platforms. And even Bitcoin, frankly, as much as I get, the value of inscriptions, the value of these stacks, or all these different options you have there, it's definitely congesting the network, and it's definitely not what the network was built for, right? And so, to each their own. And I've got a few inscriptions, but not many. And I'm not a huge fan of the idea that this is going to be a long-term congestion of the Bitcoin network, because I feel like the monetary side of Bitcoin, the currency side, the sending money internationally, is the core reason for Bitcoin. And if it's going to get congested with all these inscriptions and other stuff, then you've just killed that other side of it, because people can't transact with it because it's too expensive, right? So I don't know. I'm still kind of in wait and see mode as far as the future of the currency side of Bitcoin. I hope it doesn't just completely, push that aside and become strictly an investment vehicle, which is fine. I get the value, argument there, the whole Michael Saylor argument there. I get that, but it's not really. I was hoping that it would actually become a world currency at some point, so I don't know. Any thoughts on those?
This whole idea of art on Bitcoin was very weird to me. I was like, what the hell?
It's just odd to me too, but I get it. And shout out to the Bitcoin community, because they've been doing it, right? They've had crypto art on some type of layer 2 on Bitcoin, or even with Bitcoin inscriptions, for quite a while. And the crypto art on Bitcoin precedes, the Ethereum. So not to knock it, and it is what it is, but I'm hoping the network will become a little less expensive as we go from here, but we'll see. Hopefully the hype subsides a little bit there. Last question, man. I'm just curious, when looking at the metaverse, right? And I know we talked about you don't have an active gallery in the metaverse yet, but I definitely want to get your thoughts on it. To any of our listeners, if you want to join us in the metaverse, you can check it out at web3warriors.io. Generally works best on desktop. It's not very mobile friendly, but it's supposed to work on mobile, but it kind of touch and go. But I have a very cool kind of gamer gallery of a bunch of NFTs that we've collected under the Web3 Warriors.eth wallet. And it's all displayed here in our gamer gallery at web3warriors.io. And I think, when I look at the future of collecting art on chain and collecting these JPEGs, as you said, seeing the value in the JPEGs, I think that the metaverse and the digital world and just jumping into different digital immersive experiences and seeing art that the person who invited you there actually owns on the blockchain, and they could trade it to you or send it to you or whatever, it just adds a whole new cool element of reality in the digital world. So I'm just curious your thoughts around the metaverse, around 3D immersive spaces, and how important you think they are to the overall kind of adoption of NFTs and the future of JPEG value, as you put it.
So I think, again, going back to this whole idea of creators economy, and it's just like, next steps towards the next internet, the next creators economy, because, we've had our challenges being creators online. I mean, sharing a personal experience, I lost my Instagram account once, and I was just trying to build my own world there. And there was no specific reason given that, why did I lost my Instagram? Because all I post is, this very culture specific art that I was trying to do, right? And there's nothing like objectionable content that I was trying to post or something. So I'm nowhere qualified to be like my Instagram account being lost. So, I think as creators, we are building our own worlds and we need a lot of tools for it. And that's where, blockchain, metaverse, and all of these things come into action. So yes, highly, highly positive about it. But I think this conversation about metaverse is finding its niche day by day. I mean, not everybody's there. Again, it depends what your goals are at the end of the day, like what particular tool that you want to just use in building your own world. So, I mean, it all depends upon like what your context, like your particular goals. But yeah, I mean, these technologies flourishing, these technologies, getting into like mainstream conversations, that's great, because number one, we need more visibility to these technologies so that people can just think about like, what can be a use case for a metaverse. Like, so, when these conversations happen, like the last time when I hosted World NFT Day, I presented a keynote on why NFTs. So we came down to this whole particular point that what other things can you do with NFTs, right? So this is where I just want to like point it out that we tend to like question all of these platforms that there are no collectors there, nobody's collecting, it's a very slow market, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, what can you do with it?
Right.
Can you reach out to these particular platforms and say that, hey, I'm hosting this particular event. Can I get a Super Air sponsorship? I don't want your money. I just want like, if this is a particular platform, I am just directing this whole bunch of artists from this particular community towards your platform. Please take care of them. Let's just collaborate on this, right? So
100%.
it's not just, so it's not really about like at the end of the day that, you just start questioning these particular platforms. And also with all of these technologies, with metaverse, with NFTs, with Web3, with AI, with virtual reality, I mean, the question is what you can do with it. So like if you tend to like understand the internet, the way internet has evolved. So it's not like we were putting so much pressure on the authorities of the early World Wide Web that, okay, give us more. It's just that some people, came to a conclusion that I'm going to build an online bookstore, Amazon, right, on it. Some people were like, oh, I'm going to use it to build an online place where people can share their insights, like Blogger. That was the invent. So, everybody was just trying to use this particular piece of technology and just coming up with a different used case, right? So, I mean, that's the same case with Web3. Like, this is Ethereum. This is what it has to offer. Now, what can you do with it, right? So, don't put too much of pressure on these people because these people are already killing their days and nights to like, make this entire ecosystem sustainable for you. So, I mean, it's up to you. So, we went a little far with this conversation on World NFT Day, and we started brainstorming. Okay, you can use it for ticketing, you can use it for access, you can use it for like editions, you can use it for sell art. Like what else? So we came down to like a lot of new ideas where like somebody was saying there was an artist, and I think in the conversation she was like, I don't want to upload my work in a Google Drive anymore. So let me just put it on chain. That a few years down the line, I can just check my records. And I'm not afraid that I lost my Google account. So, where are my works, right? So that
1,000%.
so that was a good solution. I was like, those are the conversations that happen. And then, you start thinking about like, how can you use these technologies? So, I mean, I get into these conversations every day. Like,
And when
what
you're
is
in
the
those conversations, do you advocate for like a manifold.xyz, for example, as kind of, the ability to kind of create your own custom contract and have that, more full ownership, minted onto Foundation or wherever, and then selling it with your own custom contract? To how often do you kind of recommend that?
So, I mean, it all comes down to like different phases where you are in your artistic journey, right? So, the first phase of an artist journey is production. A lot of work you have to produce. You have to find yourself, like, what are the things that I really stand for, right? Am I somebody who's advocating this idea of mental health through my conversations, or am I somebody who's just thinking about how future is going to look? So a lot of cyberpunk inspired work, or am I somebody who's just got his concerns towards a specific historical place or an event that is not getting recognized, right? So the number one phase is your production. Then comes your visibility. Like, that's where you can just get onto any of a social media platform. Like, this is what I'm trying to do. You start to get yourself visible. And once you get into the last phase, which is your sales, that's where you have to be conscious that, okay, I'm gonna like use Manifold. I'm gonna like, have my own smart contract. I'm not gonna go on like any specific NFT marketplace. I can go there, but again, it's a personal decision. So I think this conversation of like using Manifold or using a specific NFT marketplace or like a piece of technology, this comes down when an artist reaches to a point when they have a very strong narrative, they are visible enough, and now it's a time to like use a particular blockchain to like either find buyers or like store your work or like. So it's just like it's a funnel that you're trying to like bring it down to a specific conclusion. So yes, this is being like talk of the town recently with marketplaces going down and you don't know where your
Yeah,
work
yeah.
is. But I mean, that's what is recommended. But for that, first you have to go through those early two phases where you are like, you have identified yourself, you've produced a lot of work, and now is the time where a buyer is really interested that I want this one piece of JPEG or this particular physical piece that I will get with this particular artwork. So, how do we go about it? So that's what I
Amazing.
believe.
That's awesome, man. I love that you actually start from that core foundation of like, okay, are you an artist who's already like working with a bunch of work you've already pulled together, and then maybe you want to bring that on chain, or are you really at the beginning of your journey and you got to kind of walk them through that? So that's amazing, man. And I'm gonna keep joining your spaces. When can people join you? Just for our listeners out there, I know you usually do it around this time on Saturdays, right? So just let everybody know how to follow you on Twitter and when you host those spaces, because they are amazing. I was telling him during our last room that I joined that it really reminded me of those early art days, which shout out to NFTP and others who hosted really large rooms where it was just about artists coming up and telling their story about their art. And some other collectors like myself in the room would often collect art. And so it was really cool to be able to see that and be part of a room like that again. I haven't been in a room like that for a while. So thank you for hosting them. Tell the people how they can find you and when you host them.
Yeah, so these spaces go by the name of The Art and the Artist because it's about the art and the artist, as simple as that. So that's the entire narrative, and the core factor, the core things that we tend to discuss is ideas, insights, and information. You might have an idea, you just come up that, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you think it's a good idea or something? Because, sometimes doesn't really matters, how expert or like how experienced you are. Sometimes you need like some sort of a validation or some sort of a testing, or like you need to pick somebody else's brains that, hey, I'm just trying to do this. What do you think? So that's the space. The other thing that we tend to focus on is insights, that somebody found something, a piece of article or something insightful that we need to know. And then they just processed it into a specific information, so people come to share that. So you can just log in into, The Art and the Artist every Saturday at 11 Eastern AM.
There you
And you
go.
can find me on Twitter, X. I go by my username Karan Pal 25. But I'm also very active on LinkedIn, where I tend to connect with a lot of experts. So you can find me Karan Pal. There's a blue icon with a K on LinkedIn, but on Twitter you can see me. But yeah, I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram is karanpal.art. You can just easily find there.
There you go.
And also on Farcaster, Karan Pal. So, I mean, that's
I gotta
where
get
I am.
going on my Farcaster, man. I definitely missed the boat on all that. I feel they were airdropping a bunch of stuff to everybody, the early users. I've been behind on the Farcaster. I've been on there for, I don't know, TP helped me get on earlier this year, but I just don't post enough on there. So the art and the artist, X Spaces every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Definitely join Karan Pal on there. I want to give a shout out to Chris joining in the metaverse at web3warriors.io. Thanks for jumping in there. Appreciate you. Very cool. I do need to ask before we wrap up, what's the story behind the Lonesome Cat and the Lonewood Mansion here? Yeah, just tell us a little bit about the cat before we wrap up. So you've got a couple of them on Foundation, and you've got one of them on Tezos. What's their story?
So, I mean, I tend to travel a lot. So I was 17 when I left my, hometown in India, and ever since then, I've been in various different cities. Like, to count now, this is the 8th city that I'm in at the moment.
You're a nomad. You're a real traveler.
So, I've traveled because I was preparing for my entrance class, and then I went to college to one city, and then for my internships, and then for my jobs, and then, coming to Canada, I was in Toronto, then I was in Kingston, then I, traveled to some other parts, and now I'm finally here in Winnipeg. So, tend to travel. And again, this whole idea of when I say that I get inspired from people, places, and patterns. So, this goes down to the bucket of places. Yeah, I went into this was in India where I was just driving on my motorcycle, and I just came across a very beautiful but a very scary kind of like an old abandoned building. So I just took my bike off. I was like, okay, let's just walk into this. So they were like, the security guard was like, yeah, you can just go in. Just there's nothing much inside. But again, beauty lies in the eyes of a beholder. So you are an artist. You are like, no, I just really getting fascinated about what this place is all about. So again, it was an old factory. I think. It was near my hometown only. So went inside. I saw this cat walking inside. I was like, this is beautiful. And I was like, look at this very cinematic, location that you have just near your hometown. And, how about we just capture this essence into a particular, collection of 2-3 different images. So, so this whole idea of lone wood. So this whole idea of something that's alone, I mean, places where people don't live anymore or operate, they do not operate over there, but they have their stories to tell, right? Like there's another Canadian artist, she goes by the name Sparkles, and what she does is basically she tend to capture abandoned spaces in Europe and in different parts of the world. So she travels there, like if you hear her stories, somebody tried to shoot her down because she was trying to click a picture of a building, so it was abandoned and it was not allowed. So I mean, all of these very
crazy.
Wow. She had to run away from a particular space. I don't know the whole story, but I connected with her. I'm gonna send her X account towards you too, so you can just check out her work. It's all about abandoned places. So it was great. I was like, these places have their own stories to tell. Just like in India, we've got a lot of historical spaces like a Taj Mahal or a Humayun's tomb.
Of course, yeah.
So these structures have their stories to tell. It tells a lot about who were the human beings here, what they were trying to do. So I mean, similar case, went into this abandoned mansion, and I was like, okay, this is fascinating. So that's
this was a real cat. It was a real place.
A real cat there.
Yeah.
So I was getting confused on what should I name the smaller series that I have, and then Lily, she's one of my friends. She's one of my seniors. She's in Japan. She's an artist too. So we were just trying to the initial idea was to name the cat Kuro because Kuro means black, and the cat is black, and Kuro Neko. And then a lot of these ideas I was having till the time I came down to this whole idea of a mansion where people don't live anymore. So lone wood mansion, just to make it a little more differentiated. So
I like it. I like it.
The entire process of and I enjoy this process, and I think creators should spend a lot of time in this process because then the art hits the audience. When collectors see, they're like, oh, I feel something's there. You've gone through this thoughtful process into creating something. So it's not just random idea or some random brush stroke that you did and then you are like, oh, this is my masterpiece. I'm sorry guys, if anybody's listening, that's not your masterpiece.
No, you're good. And then I mean, there's a whole topic of AI as well and incorporating that, which can be done tastefully, and then there's those who punch a few words and call it a piece of art within 30 seconds of creation. So but that's another conversation. Maybe we'll save it for the next time we get you on here. I know we're going over. I did notice that on Tezos, you've transferred this pilot piece, the cat one, to Goat Gallery, and Goat Gallery actually transferred a handful, one of which went to Rizzle, which is kind of cool because Rizzle recently had an event. Shout out to Kane Mayfield. He was out hanging out at the Rizzle Fest last week. So I just thought it was an interesting on-chain overlap with like you, who I've met here in Winnipeg, you know, created art, which went out to some other random guy in America who is a friend of a friend. I don't really know him that well, but I know of him. He's a very well-known collector, and he does a lot of Bitcoin collecting as well. So I was just curious why you transferred this to Goat Gallery, and then if there was any other story there. But it was just a kind of cool little thing I noticed on-chain.
So there's this project that Go Gallery that Staz has, the Hedgie project, if you know about that. So, I think there was this game and then people get rewarded, and, it was a way of just getting visible as an artist. Or they just reached out to me that, would you like to give away a particular artwork that we will just, definitely give as a reward to other artists, So of course, this guy is like super passionate, Staz. I think, you should just bring him on I'm gonna send all
I'd
these
love to have them. I know Goat Gallery did a big thing at Futurist as well. They had
they are the ones, like they are the curators at the blockchain Futurist,
right.
And just amazing team, amazing people. Staz specifically is just a big advocate of this whole idea of art on chain. He's building big in Toronto, so so of course I've met him like personally. I've been to the Goat Gallery. I've been to his one or two exhibits there, and then So I was like, this is a great idea because I was just getting started, and I was like, this is a great idea of like spreading the word, and why not like just share your art because if you go down,
that's awesome. And I love how he kind of then turns around and kind of shares it around. So it's really cool, man. And I did not know Goat Gallery, Canada's first permanent digital art gallery and Web3 studio dedicated to supporting digital artists and promoting digital art. Very apropos for our conversation today, man. I really appreciate you being here and joining us. Do you have any other feedback you'd like to share? I know you were mentioning you might want to share something. Did you still want to share something on your screen there? Or we went through pretty much your full NFT collections here?
No, we went through everything.
Cool.
Like I was just thinking about. Yeah, I think everything's just covered in the conversation yet.
Nice.
But yeah.
So what's around the corner for you, Karan? What are you most looking forward to?
I'm excited to like almost each and everything, and I think it's like I am in that phase of production at the moment from what I highlighted earlier on, because I have kind of like discovered the art style that I want to go ahead with, and a particular narrative that I want to build. So more of production at the moment, then getting visible, and then just trying to find myself buyers into like the kind of an art that I want to do. Of course, I'm not trying to like say I'm just very cool or something, but I'm very over ambitious. I'm killing my days and nights to like, make South Asian art a mainstream conversation in the art world, because there are a lot of Iranian artists also. Like, just look at their art, man. It's just beautiful. Like recently I collected a lot of, Iranian calligraphy specific art on Tezos, and it's beautiful. Just these are like ancient techniques like that you can just use in your own like in your own processes also, but for that you need to make these techniques visible enough so that they become a mainstream conversation, right? So that's what I'm to do. That's what my content strategy is going to be for the coming days too. I've started to make my Instagram a lot more inclusive of these particular techniques and these particular artists, because at the end of the day I'm partly capitalistic, partly socialistic. I do want to make money. I do want to have all of those luxuries in my life, but I cannot do it all by myself. So that's why I need my people.
Yeah, 100%. There's networking, finding new audiences. And of course, capitalism is part of it. Selling is part of it, and we shouldn't be ashamed of that, because there's value, true value being given in the art, and true value being deserved in the purchase of the art and earned, so amazing. We'll be watching, we'll be tuning in to your spaces Saturdays, 11 a.m. Eastern. Everybody make sure you follow Karan Pal 25 on Twitter. Yeah, man, really excited for you. Really looking forward to it, and looking forward to connecting more locally as well with On-Chain Manitoba, and really, doing the IRL work to kind of push the technology forward. Maybe eventually we get that blockchain NAFTA pulled together for you, Idris. We'll be working at the national level with other countries, and that's a future that we can hope for collaboration. And Idris was saying that he recently bought a Bored Ape T-shirt at Walmart, so that goes to show you, it's slowly creeping into the normie world. You can buy Bored Ape at Walmart now. So I know Pudgy Penguins was probably the first one, right? Pudgy Penguins went out and sold their stuff at Walmart too.
I think you can buy it at a Zoomy store also. Maybe.
Yeah, Zoomies. Yeah, I remember seeing that when I was in
Sells
Toronto.
a lot of like NFT specific merch that they have. Yeah.
All right. Well, Karan, I know I'm going to have you back on the show. You're here locally. We're going to try to set up an in-person studio, and maybe that's when we'll make it happen. But we're going to stay connected and keep pushing the technology forward. We're going to join your spaces on The Art and the Artist on Saturdays, 11 a.m. And I really appreciate all of the insights, and I think really important conversation around the art and the power of art on the blockchain. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We've gone down to having the bi-weekly show now, but always pushing the conversation forward about the creator economy on the blockchain, artists on the blockchain, and everything that's possible. So to everybody out there, thank you for joining us. Until next time, we'll catch you in